we are a very complex matrixed organization. I mean, it is like a command and control structure does not ever work in this kind of environment. And because it is so matrix, you do have to engage with a number of internal stakeholders to make anything happen. And so understanding how to paint the picture of the North Star where we're headed, to help people understand what their role is in the process of getting us there. If you don't understand how to kind of lead through influence, you'll never be able to get anything accomplished.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Jodi Weintraub, who's the Global Chief People Officer at GroupM Nexus. During the episode, Jodi shares how to build alliances and lead through influence, how powerful storytelling can inspire people to change, and how to convince others to prioritize your needs. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Jodi, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
I can't believe it's been like 6 months or so since we last spoke. What have you been up to?
Actually, a lot. So since I spoke with you last, I had been training for what was really the kind of hike of my life. I started hiking during COVID. It all started as a 10,000 steps challenge with other coworkers. I got tired of walking in my neighborhood, so I started hiking.
Nice.
Met a good friend who became my hiking buddy, and we decided to hike the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu in Peru.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous. I've always wanted to go there.
I did training for that. It's a 4-day hike, and in September we went, and my only goal was to survive and finish it fully intact, and I did, and it was an amazing experience. So it's been an exciting fall for me. So
that's incredible. Well, congratulations. I don't even know where to start off on that. What was it? Or did it live up to the expectations, seeing Machu Picchu?
It did. What I would say is it is by far the hardest, most grueling physical thing I've ever done because of the altitude change and the complete hours of walking uphill on steps, hour after hour. I did a ton of training. If I had to go back and do it again, I would probably do Stairmaster for 6 hours a day. It was that intense, but it was an incredible experience. And just to finally on day 4 have your first vision of this ancient Incan ruin was amazing.
Yeah, what a great ending, right? It's like a good motivation to get there.
Made me realize I want to stay in hotels at the end of the day and not tents. There was my realization.
I feel like during those kind of moments, you learn a lot about yourself. What do you think you learn about yourself going through that experience? That's
a great question. I am resilient, and I am very, very goal focused. I was, I kind of told the smaller team that I went with that there's a great chance that I will be the last person coming into class, into camp every night. And I said, and that's okay with me. I said, I need you to clap when I walk into camp. And so I was probably hiking on my own without other people around me 85 or 90% of the time.
Really?
And
wow.
I'm okay with that, which gives you a whole lot of time to really think about things and no electronics or anything. And I just realized, I've always known that I was goal focused and driven, but training for this was different than anything I'd ever done before. And just being able to rely on what I was trying to accomplish for that day, or frankly, for the next 2 hours at a time, it was just a really good reminder for me personally that I am better when I have a goal, personal, professional, anything that I can work towards, because that is the motivator for me. So it was just a validation for me of setting goals is a critical kind of component to my way of operating, personally, professionally, anything. So
I remember someone told me, Chris, you can't hit a target you can't see. And I was like, what? They're like, because I think I was complaining about not being able to do something, and they were like, okay, what's your target? And what are the steps you're taking to get there? And I was like, I don't have any. They're like, well, how do you expect to hit a target you can't see? And I was like,
I completely agree. I talk about having like our North Star all the time.
Yeah.
And I think when I am most like crazed is when I don't know what we're trying to work towards. If I don't have the big picture of what we're trying to work towards, it just makes it difficult for me to prioritize what I need to focus on
and action it, right? Like, because once you know where your North Star is, you can start, putting in those steps to get there, right?
I'm a big iterative step person. Even with the training for the big hike, I've been doing training every weekend and during the week. And then we found a place, my hiking buddy and I found a place that does high altitude training. And we had 8 weeks left before the hike. It's a place that was, 6 miles from my house, actually, where the room is pressurized to a certain altitude. And then you can put on a mask. I look like Tom Cruise in Top Gun, with a breathing mask on.
It's funny because we're talking about HR leaders putting their oxygen masks on first. You literally did it.
I absolutely did. But it was literally the iterative steps of you've got 8 weeks left.
Yeah.
How many days a week can you do this? Where can you fit it back into the plan? And I was so grateful that we had the chance to do that.
That's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing because the way I look at it, and I've always done this with sports, you kind of do all of the hard work up front so you can enjoy the moment. So people always say to me, aren't you nervous, Chris, doing your conferences, for example, like Future Work you mentioned last week in front of 4,000 people? I was like, well, we've already done the hard work. All of those steps and those 3 or 4 months beforehand, the reps, we had to put in to make it happen. So on the day, I'm like, the hard work is now been done. Now it's time to execute, enjoy the moment, be in it, and just let everything else go.
Our tour guide said something, and it was so, people will make offhand comments about things and you go, "Ooh, that's so impactful." And he said to the whole group, he said, "I want you to think about as you are hiking each day," he said, "there are 2 animals. One of the animals is a horse and the other is a llama. And the horse is very focused with blinders on and watches each step. But the llama has a long neck and stops to look around." He goes, "You need to split your time between the horse and the llama because you need to enjoy being here and being in the moment and seeing everything. Lift your head up and look around." And I was like, I joked with him, half the time I was the horse for 95% of the time because I wanted to watch every step I took. But stepping back to look at the big picture was so important, frankly, on the journey. It really was. And I was actually having a conversation with someone I worked with 2 weeks ago. And I said, on a day-to-day basis here, it can be really frustrating because I can't see the progress that we're making. And he said, think that I can make an improvement of 1% a day when I come in. Then I can look back over this period of time and say, wow, look at where we've come. But sometimes in that moment, it is really hard to see where you've come. And I thought that resonates with me so much because in the day-to-day, it is hard sometimes as you're going through an organizational transformation to see the progress. But if I look back 2 years ago to where we are today, astronomical, improvement. And so I have to kind of remember that. So I have the visual of the horse and the llama in my head, the 1% improvement per day, and then look up and go, where are we headed? Where have we come from? And are we moving along that that continuum to get us to the North Star where we want to be. So very applicable personally and professionally.
Yeah, I absolutely love that analogy. I'm sure everyone listening also feels the same way. And isn't that really what we want for all of our employees as well? And to create that experience.
They're headed. For me, I actually was having a conversation kind of yesterday with a group of people because we're going to be rolling out this new we're developing a new role within the organization. And we were talking about what that means for career paths for people. And this was the business unit group I was talking about. And I sent them a note that said, more important than being able to say, here's the next step in the career path for this kind of person or this kind of role is working with our managers to be able to have a better kind of conversation.
Yeah, like what you just said.
Says, here are, based on what you're interested in, based on your skills and capabilities, here's almost a suite of opportunities that you could consider because there's not necessarily this linear next step. So what we want to be able to do is improve the quality of the conversation around what is it you want to do and how do we help you get there. There may not be a direct, one-to-one, here's your next step, particularly when you reach a certain level career-wise. There just may not be, if you go back to the old, and well, I am old, so I'll call it, big 8 accounting firms, big 6 accounting firms, now big 4, accounting and consulting firms. I don't know, was it 25 years ago when Deloitte published a white paper that was called the career lattice, not the career ladder? Because when you were at the big 4, initially you had 5 levels. You were staff, senior manager, partner. That was it. That was your career step, up or out. And when they first kind of launched that white paper around the career lattice, you were like, holy crap, that is the best way of starting to articulate what that means from a lateral, horizontal, vertical, all the different options that you could go, and to start thinking about that. And you have an author in the UK, or a set of authors that have written books called The Squiggly Career.
Yeah.
And that is the same kind of thought. And so to me, it is almost more about helping people think about options versus saying, here is the next step, because the next step may not exist today. Yeah. It may exist in 6 months from now if there's a new opportunity. So
it's interesting.
That's the stuff I get passionate about.
I can tell.
Talk about.
It's interesting because the current workforce model is kind of, in many ways, forced employees to be the horse and not the llama, right? So we want to.
Oh my God! Yes, great analogy. Exactly. Here's your path. Follow this.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, jobs that exist now didn't exist 5 years ago. In some cases, didn't exist 2 years ago. And frankly, there will be an entire set of opportunities and roles and capabilities that will exist in the future that we can't even conceptualize today. So, I'm going to go back and use my own analogy now. Be the llama. That's going to be my
exactly right.
My code word. Be the llama.
It's true, and you can imagine how much more motivated and inspired people are going to be, right, when they are looking around, like your analogy says, and seeing the opportunities and seeing what it means for them, right? What does it mean for me? What is my contribution? And honestly, sometimes we're so, as organizations, there's so much going on that we don't even take a second to stop and appreciate it, like you said, as well. I remember being a senior director in my company before I left and started this company, and at not one point did I stop and look back at where I'd come from. I'd be like, what's next? Oh my God, I don't have this, and complaining, and like the horse had definitely the horse's lens on. And if I would have probably took a second to stop and be like, wow, look how far I've come in 10 years. And from when I started to where I am now, and I got this team and this great, everything, and even with this business, Shane and I we don't take enough time to stop and appreciate the journey that we've come on. We're like, what's next? What's next? What's next?
I talk about that, appreciating the journey. I didn't think it wasn't fully realized until I was actually on a 4-day hike, and it really
time to think about it.
But it's the physical journey, not the conceptual journey. Like, you really do think about, I just need to get to the next rest station in 2 hours. This is the journey that I'm on right now. And I need to get to camp at the end of the night. I need to appreciate what I'm doing right now. I need to look up at the Andes Mountains and go, holy crap, this is spectacular, and really kind of being in the moment. And that's actually, you guys send kind of a list of potential questions that will be asked. And one of them is about, pieces of advice for leaders. And one of them is, to me, about really being present in the moment when you are working, talking with employees and doing things. So that need to be present and to appreciate where you are right now is, I think, so critical, personally and professionally. So
I think everything you've been speaking about so far are the qualities that you need to be a CHRO. Resilience. If you don't have that, you probably won't last long.
It's not to say there are not days that I don't crawl under my desk in a fetal position, of course, and sit there and then, unroll and get back in my chair and get back on another video call. But
what is it when you're in those moments, and we've all been in those moments, what is it that gets you back in the chair?
Because I do know where we're headed, and I do know the impact that I have. And so for me, it really is I'm very clear on the impact that I have on our organization. And so what gets me back into the chair is saying, okay, you're dealing with some crap, put it aside and get back and re-engage. Because some days it's it's the in the moment thing. Sometimes it's hard to see it's hard to be the llama sometimes when you're in the moment. So being the llama, that's it, man. I'm going to write a book now called Be the Llama. That's it.
Yeah. Literally, the title of this episode is going to be "Are You the Horse or the Llama?" And the people and people are going to be like, "What is this? Let me just listen."
Exactly.
As well,
sometimes you need to be the horse. Sometimes you need to be the llama.
It's true, like that heads down, focus work, right? We've solved it all now.
When you are in the doing the hard work, you need to be focused.
Yeah.
But you need to know that North Star. You need Machu Picchu in the end, so you know what you're hiking towards.
Oh, I love this so much. I love this whole analogy. Who would have thought that it would have come this far?
Exactly.
Yeah, when you first became a CPO and you first had one of those moments, was it just learning the hard way, or did you have a mentor that kind of prepared you for those moments?
I don't think I had a mentor that prepared me for those moments, and that's. Looking back on it, I think I know that I would have done things differently if I had someone who had maybe challenged me to think about things. I got promoted fairly early in my career, so at the time I knew everything. So that was really good. There wasn't anything that I didn't think I knew. And I remember having conversations, with my HR peers earlier career where I said, well, if I ran things, I would do it differently, until you're actually in the role and you realize, there's a lot to deal with. I do a lot of mentoring with people now.
Yeah.
And so both formally and informally, and the value of that to be able to help you move into llama mode when you need to really is so important, because when you are spiraling in the moment with the amount of stuff that has to happen, it is hard to step back. And I read a really good meme the other day. It was a quote that somebody had posted on LinkedIn, but he was an executive coach, and he said something about when he would start working with people and he evaluated their calendars and what they spent their time on. For people who were in executive roles, the amount of time that they were spending on transactional meetings during their day overtook everything else and didn't give them time to step back and ensure that they were able to do what they needed to do from a strategy standpoint, from a direction standpoint, kind of the things that get pushed to the wayside when you're dealing with the transactional things. I think having a mentor or coach, frankly, helps you really throughout your career in different stages for different things, in stepping back to make sure you're spending your time on the right things, to make sure that you are moving forward in the direction that you need to, and to challenge your thinking around things.
It's important. I've made that mistake early on, that I was so focused being in the business, I couldn't focus on the business.
Yes.
And that's where delegating became a key skill of mine, which I realized I wasn't really good at early on. I literally couldn't live without my assistant Lisa now, and that's where you build up the team. I have a coach now. I have Lisa. I have people around me that allow me to take that time. For example, when our Wednesdays are completely blocked out on my calendar, so I could get away from those meetings and just focus on the bigger picture and have time to actually be the llama. And I love that.
That is it. You and I will now be Monaco as we think about being the llama.
Yeah, it's good to have a picture, right? When you think about these things, and analogy. That's why I love analogies. They really help, having those principles. So that I'm with you on that one, because so I was just getting pulled meeting to meeting, conversation to conversation, and I never really had a time to just reflect. And just, it's funny how I can't remember the exact science behind it, but the amount of problems I've solved whilst out for a run, or even in the shower, or just when in the gym, when you're not even thinking about the problem or the challenge, is when it kind of comes to you, right? To your I don't know if people can relate to this listening, and because you're not focused so on it, you're not in the work, you can kind of step back. I'm like, oh, that's how I do that. And it just comes out of nowhere. So I try and make sure I always dedicate time just to think and reflect and also have gratitude.
Without sucking up to you, when I hike, when I hike by myself, I'm usually listening to either a book or a podcast, and I listen to a ton of your podcasts just because if there's an interesting topic around something that is compelling for me, I'll listen to it. And that actually sparks me to think about, oh, this is a way that we could also kind of think about it. And I don't do it from the intent of, I do it for my own education purposes. But I love to be able to have that aha moment about, oh, this is actually something that we could look at, how do we use this here as well? So no suck up to you, but there we go. Your podcasts have sparked.
One of the things that I think that our listeners can, I appreciate that. One of the things I think our listeners can benefit from, and it's been huge for me, is sometimes it's hard to always remember everything. So one of the things that Tess L, my coach, helped me with is I have what I call my daily questions. That at the end of every day, I go through this list. I've actually got it up in front of me whilst we're talking, just to give you an example. And some of those questions are, did I do my best to set clear goals today, right? And then I reflect on that, and I give myself a little marking, in there. Did I do my best to make progress towards achieving those goals? Did I do my best to exercise my body? Did I do my best to exercise my mind? Did I do my best to get a good night's sleep? That is
your moment of reflection every day.
Yeah, I do it, but I had
whatever they want, but that is your moment of reflection.
Exactly, but I had to make it something which was, I had to be more intentional.
Yeah.
Did I do my best to live by my values? Did I do my best to make someone feel special? And then did I do my best to spend quality time with my daughter, Robin? Did I do my best to make sure my wife felt valued and loved?
Okay, do you ask yourself all those questions every day?
Every day. And then I mark, I've got a little spreadsheet. These I'm looking at an Excel spreadsheet right now. It's nothing fancy. And I mark, green if I did a great job. I've got yellow if I kind of done a little bit, but didn't. And for each one, by the way. And then I've got blank that I didn't do it. And I can see the trends, right? So for example, I can see, and I'm kind of calling myself out right now, that there's a big gap in my exercise that I haven't done. Mm-hmm. For the last couple of weeks, I haven't been taking care of myself, and I can see it in there. And it just really helps. Did I do my best to practice my superpower of resilience? All right. So it's both personal and professional. But it just, again, it's so hard to remember all these things. Right. So I made it a task. And one of the things I've just moved into my house. And one of the things I'm doing might sound sour to people listening, but for me, I'm so excited about it, is that in my wardrobe, when I open up the wardrobe in the morning to get ready, I'm going to have all of these listed on the inside of the door. So in the morning because I'll have to see that every day because I'll get dressed, right? So I'll see this list and I'm going to make it look a bit more artistic and nice. But I want that list all the way down the door, just so it's kind of like front and center of my mind every morning when I get ready and go, okay, this is how I start my day.
That's great. I like to have things like that. I like to have in a visual way as well. I have, if I turn over to the side ever when I'm talking to people, I have 3 kind of statements to remind myself about things, around how I respond to things or whatever, that are posted on my door of my home office. And I'll go back periodically when either my head is swirling or whatever, and I'll turn and I'll look at them and go, okay, now I'm centered. One of mine is, don't allow your emotions to overpower your intelligence.
Ooh.
I need to
especially in HR.
It's easy to get kind of caught up in things emotionally when I'm like, you know what? You need a balance there on things. So I have periodic things that I do have to post as well, because it is that visual reminder that I need, or it goes by the wayside and you don't focus on it. So.
And sometimes it's also about taking stuff away rather than adding. So one of my favorite ones I look at is, did I do my best to avoid what I want to avoid?
Oh, that is a good one.
Because sometimes I again, I love Chester. He asked me to create a pie chart of all of the things that give me energy and all of the things that take away my energy. And it was one of the best exercises that I've ever done. And I realized when I looking at my calendar and my day, I was doing all of these things that were just sucking
your energy.
yeah. And I was like, I don't need to do these things, but I'm doing them. And so now I ask myself that every day, and I'm like, oh, why did I do that? You know, I shouldn't have done that. That hour could have been spent in a conversation with one of my team members.
Yeah.
You know, I really need to do that as well. So yeah, I love this whole topic as well. It's fascinating, but I think it's important to have those systems in place, because we're all human. We're not going to remember everything. And I'm not perfect, and it's good to, and this is last thing I'll mention on that. The most important thing about what I just mentioned is it starts with, did I do my best?
Yes.
Because not every day are you going to be able to achieve those things, and you need to just let it, as Marshall Goldsmith always says, let it go, let it go.
So that is my mantra. Yes. Yeah. When the song came out, I'm like, what was this written for? Let it go.
Yeah.
Let it know, let it go. Yeah.
Let it go. Did I do my best? You know, give yourself a break, everyone. Once at a time. I love the fact that we had all these bullet points that we didn't even get to any of them. I was going to talk about. I feel like it's even more valuable, to be honest. I don't know about you. I feel like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the things I want to ask you is one of the roles of HR, I feel like, is to advocate and be a voice for your employees and for the organization. This sounds easier than it's harder than it sounds. How do you do that in a practical sense?
So I'm gonna make a statement that is maybe controversial when other HR people or people hear it, and is around that word advocate. Because one of the things that I talk about to my teams is that HR's role is not as an advocate for employees. I always say that an advocate for employees, like in the US environment, I'm in a global role, but if I refer to the US environment, is frankly what a labor union is. Unions advocate for employees. HR's role is to, I think, if you go back, if you really go back to Dave Ulrich, and he talks about outside in, and you think about your clients. And to me, HR is the management team member that looks at how do we best impact stakeholder value in whatever that stakeholder kind of ecosystem looks like, by ensuring that we have the right workforce capabilities that are through our people and our employees. So that is different than being an employee advocate, but it actually, how do we translate that though? We translate that into, if we know that improving employee engagement improves earnings per share, and we know that from all the Gallup surveys that are out there, if we know that customer satisfaction is increased because we have engaged employees, then of course you are going to do the things that you need to do and advocate for those things on behalf of your employee population, because it will then impact stakeholder value. So there's a slight kind of nuance to that word advocate. One of the things that I talk about, so I am head of HR for about a 9,000 person organization within a 40,000 person organization within a 100,000 person organization. So it's a large matrixed, complex organization. And I lead the global HR function for about 9,000 people within the media division of GroupM. I work with the group called GroupM Nexus, which focuses on really what's called performance media. We're the largest in the world at what we do. It is an exciting space to be in. So let me restate, it's a global role. I've got 9,000 people and I am a team of one. And people go, how do you make that happen? I'm like, yep. When I came on board, the person that I came to work for said, I need you in this role, but you can't hire anyone. So then it became kind of a game of, how do we actually get work done here? How do we make change happen as we're going through this transformation? And it was really through this idea of how do I influence other groups in the organization, basically, to do collective work on behalf of my employee population. And so I started using that phrase that I advocate for my business unit with two primary populations, basically within the organization. I advocate with regional and market HR teams that are responsible for actually delivering kind of people services at all levels throughout the organizations. And I advocate with global functional HR COE leaders. So when they are designing programs to business challenges, they understand the bespoke nature of my employee population. So my advocating on behalf of my business unit is to ensure that all the people who are involved in designing things and delivering services understand what my business leaders in their regions and markets and what my employees need. And so it really becomes this exercise in kind of painting a story for people about where we're headed, kind of helping, convince people that you need them to be involved in helping to make this happen, and then continuing to educate and advocate really on behalf of the whole business unit to say, I need you to prioritize, what we're trying to do in your whole scheme of things. And so
I love that.
For me, advocating is around, ensuring that the people who have the resources to do it are understanding what you're trying to do and are along the journey to help you execute on it.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I'm sure people listening were like, wait a minute, you're doing this all on your own. And we've spoke for a long time that all of these things we talk about, isn't owned by HR. If we talk about well-being, right?
No.
We talk about employee engagement. We can keep going, the whole list. So it's really great that you're basically helping those leaders and those managers create their strategies, their visions through those lenses. So do that, but have a lens of diversity. Do it through a lens of well-being. Do it through the lens of, so keep those in mind when you're designing systems, programs, strategies.
Yeah, I will frequently joke, if you call something an HR initiative, it is the kiss of death.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
It's why
true.
DE&I programs, frankly, I think are things that should be driven and owned by the business.
Of course, exactly.
And so HR can help build the infrastructure and
we should own it.
Driving that. But if you make something an HR initiative, then without being able to tie it to stakeholder value, that's when it's easy to say, not that important, frankly. So to me, and that does go back to that earlier statement of, at the end of the day, we have stakeholders, we are accountable. In some cases, it's shareholders in public companies. In some cases, it's a stakeholder as your employee population. I think it was Richard Branson probably that everyone quotes, which is, take care of your employees and they take care of your customers. Kind of, I think he said it more eloquently.
Mm-hmm.
But my role as I advocate for my employee, or I advocate for my business unit, is understanding what are the things that need to be in place so that our employees feel capable, empowered, safe, all those kinds of things that lead to incredible performance so that they want to stay with us and not go someplace else. Yeah. So advocating with all those groups is kind of taking the lens of what are all those things and how do we make all those things happen within our organizational structure, and what are the things that I'm responsible for? What are the things that markets, regions, business, non-HR people kind of are responsible for? Because at the end of the day, I can put the prettiest program in place. If you have a manager who sucks and they're horrible, whatever, it doesn't matter what.
It's so true. You're
on the front cover of HR magazine for the prettiest program. You have a problem with an employee, a manager who's running off your people. So there is this, it's good to have systems and processes, particularly as you scale and as you want, consistency where you can, have that across the globe. But I think at the end of the day, if you don't have the right kind of things in place to ensure that your managers, frankly, the ones who are interacting with your people every day, understand kind of what their role is in helping employees grow and develop and all those kind of things, it doesn't matter how pretty your programs are.
I'm with you. It just goes to show you, especially now with the way your role's set up, like how important it is the skill of leading through, to influencing through others. Like probably we don't talk about that enough. how important that is.
We are a very complex matrixed organization. I mean, it is like a command and control structure does not ever work in this kind of environment. And because it is so matrix, you do have to engage with a number of internal stakeholders to make anything happen. And so understanding how to paint the picture of the North Star of where we're headed, to help people understand what their role is in the process of getting us there. If you don't understand how to kind of lead through influence, you'll never be able to get anything accomplished. I have a book that I quote quite liberally called Network Scaled and Agile, or Network Agile and Scaled, and by Amy Cates, who's was an OD guru, and her company was acquired by Accenture a few years ago. And I read that book and I make sure everybody else reads it. And I've stolen a phrase from it that I repeat over and over and over again. And I get other people to repeat it. And the phrase is called freedom within a framework. And I love that way of thinking about, as we are trying to make change happen within the organization on a global basis, and as we are trying to work through other teams to actually actualize things and deliver them, it is recognizing from a framework standpoint, here's the framework, here's our North Star, be the llama. But the freedom within that is recognizing that in each market, in each region, things may need to be made a little bit more bespoke because of either employment laws or cultures or whatever. And so as you look at how to influence an organization and influence change for transformation, kind of putting in place, what's the framework? What freedom do you have within that framework to make it your own? Because if I'm trying to shove it down your throat in the UK,
a policy.
Yeah, if I'm trying to shove it down your throat in the UK because that's the way the US does it, that is an instant fail.
Yeah.
So how do we bring people on the journey? How do we say, here are the non-negotiables, because this is important to us and this is the non-negotiable, but here's all the room where you have flexibility. So working with, 60 countries around the globe, 4 major regions, understanding where to kind of put a stake in the ground versus where to say, this is yours to take and run with it, is part of that kind of leading through influence and helping people get aligned behind kind of the things that matter most, and how do we deliver against those?
No, I love that. And I think that's where in the past we'd always put principles, policies in place, but now it's more leading towards principles, right? Where and aligning that with the values of who we are as an organization as well. And then people can, and having a common language about what that means at GroupM, because it can mean different things in different places.
Absolutely. How do we define this? Let's get in alignment about how we define this. And then it's not a free for all. Let's kind of say, here's the things, whether it's your values or your cultures or whatever it is that you decide are the non-negotiables that, the organization doesn't get to say no to. You may say innovation is one of our kind of guiding principles. You don't get to say, no, we don't want to be innovative. So you get to say, here are the things that matter to us that you need to be able to incorporate in whatever you're doing. But here's where you have the flexibility to make it your own, take it and run with it. And that, to me, is where you start to build the relationships with teams of people who have their own agendas, frankly, that they're trying to address. I mean, everybody, not good, bad agenda, but everybody has their own agendas of what they're trying to accomplish. So figuring out where your agenda fits in with their agendas and where you can work together, where you need dedicated support, how do you get that? To me, that's kind of the how do I maneuver through an organization from an influence standpoint. I remember reading somewhere, somebody, was saying, oh, they didn't like people who were political. And I said, politics in an organization actually means you understand how to get things done within the construct of your organizational environment. So to me, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, so we are going through, as much, government political things as any place else in the country over the last couple of months. and so I think political gets a bad rap when we talk about that. But to me, understanding how to accomplish things within a complex matrixed global organizational structure is understanding the politics of the organization and how to influence. And then if we go back to advocate on behalf of your business unit within that structure. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a kind of organizational understanding of how to get things done.
You mentioned so many valuable things there. And like, again, it's important, like you said, to go into those conversations, understanding what are that person's motivations, guides, goals, what are mine, and where can we meet, right? It's not their right, you're wrong, you're more important. What you're doing is more important than what they're doing is more important, because that will never work. As well, right? There has to be an understanding, right, and come together. And also, you kind of don't want that, because if you have everyone agreeing in an organization, then there's no innovation. Right, that's going to happen from that as well. Everyone's been, oh great, we'll just carry on doing it the way we've always been doing it, just because. As well.
I'm not a great just because kind of person.
Yeah, I can tell.
People have a responsibility to dissent, frankly, during
100%.
this process of being able to say that's not going to work here because of X, Y, and Z, but here's a way that we can make that happen, knowing what you want the end goal to be. To me, that's the freedom within a framework, which is we understand our markets better than you ever will. And so we understand what the llama is looking at. And we know, here's what we think is going to be the most impactful way to make that happen within our space. And I'm like, great, go for it. Happy day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Listen, last question, because time has flown by. Yes. I can't believe it. We've already been going for 40 minutes. I've been enjoying it so much on it, genuinely. What do you, looking back, over your career, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you first sat in this seat as a CPO?
Probably, honestly, what I just said to you is that, no, and I mean that in all sincerity, my need for control, like in every aspect of my life, is so significant. I like to think that I can control whatever. And I look back now and I realize how little is actually in my control. I'm not an overtly religious person. I believe in a God, a higher power, whatever anybody wants to call it. When my husband and I got married, our rabbi said something in Yiddish and then translated it to English for the group. And it was the phrase, man plans and God laughs. And I literally had a plaque made of that, because I do believe that there is a plan out there. And my need to try to control everything, work, personal, whatever, I had to let go of the need for controlling every aspect of everything. That's where, I wish now that I, as an earlier stage CHRO or CPO, I wish that I really understood how to really use that influence to bring people on the journey versus making it a directive. I think that it would have gone a much longer way if I had been a better storyteller, maybe if I had been a better translating it to the business outcomes, so business leaders saw it as we're going to do this because it's going to impact our results positively. So my learning was, if I look back now, would be wish I had less of a need for control to drive things.
I absolutely love that. Man plans, God laughs.
God laughs. It's perfect. It's an old Yiddish saying somewhere.
Yeah, we all can relate to that one.
Yeah.
Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I'm so happy we made it.
Thank you.
We made it as well, and I appreciate you sharing your journey and experiences, why we started this show in the first place.
Thank you for having me.
And I know this is your first podcast. Hopefully it won't be your last, because I feel like you've got such a lot of knowledge and wisdom to share. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the best, and have a great, enjoy the holidays.
Thank you. You too, and have fun in the new house.
Thank you.